I'm Shanks of Lift Like a Girl, and I'm going to show you how to perform a landmine squat. And this is either a good variation or something you can progress to from a goblet squat. I showed you how to perform a goblet squat in a different video, and as I stated, one of the main limitations to a goblet squat is the loading potential of that movement, simply because you hold either a kettlebell or a dumbbell right here on your chest, and you can only load that movement so much before it becomes just incredibly awkward or impossible. And that's one of the cool things about the landmine squat. To me, it's very similar to a goblet squat variation, and it allows for greater loading because of the use of the barbell. And I'm using what's called a post landmine here, but you can also use other machines or tools that are called landmines. Another option, if you don't actually have that tool, is to jam the end of a barbell into a corner or the end of a power rack perhaps, but pad it with something like a towel so it doesn't tear everything to hell. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the landmine squat, and then we're going to go over a couple of important things here. But as with any squat variation, what you need to do first is make sure you know how to position your feet. And a good starting position with any squat variation is to put your heels under your shoulders and point your toes out slightly, about 15 to 30 degrees. That's a really good position to start from. And then I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the landmine squat, and then we'll go over a couple of other things as well. Now, everybody's going to be a little different when it comes to how close to start with the barbell in position. This is just due to individual limb length. I have longer legs, and so I may need to be a bit further away compared to somebody with shorter legs. So you may need to play with where you start with the landmine squat, but a little bit of practice will help you figure out pretty quickly where you prefer to be in position. So basically from here, this is the awkward part of the landmine squat, and I'll show you how to make it a little less awkward here in a moment, is getting it into position. So make sure you actually use correct form when you get this off the ground. Actually deadlift it up, and if you don't know how to deadlift, I have a video for that you need to watch so you don't hurt yourself. So basically I'm holding this like I hold a kind of like I hold a dumbbell with a goblet squat. It's underneath my chin and resting against my chest. And then from this position, I'm going to perform a regular squat. I'm going to stick my butt back and simultaneously bend my knees. And I'm going to keep my back nice and tight and rigid, just like any other squat variation. So my chest is kind of stuck out a little bit just to get my back set, tight, rigid, and neutral. And then from here, stick my butt back, bend at the knees, squat down until my hips are a little lower than my knees, and come back up. And then when you're done, set it back down. So that's how you do a landmine squat, and it does allow you to use more weight than a goblet squat variation. You are kind of limited by how much weight you can comfortably get into that position. One way to make it a little less awkward is to put this plate, or whatever plates you're using, have this stacked up on a box. That way, instead of having to hoist it down from the ground, if it's possible, you could have this sitting on a box where you can come up to it and just get in the squat position and walk it out that way. Again, this movement can be a little awkward as far as setting it up. That's why it's not always one of my favorites, but if you are more comfortable with that type of squatting pattern as opposed to having a barbell on your back, it's a really great variation that you can consider using. So that is how you perform a landmine squat. And when you do this, just be sure to apply the same cues as you would with any other squat. Get your feet set in a stance that's comfortable for you, usually about shoulder width, in a little or out a little more. Feet turned out about 15 to 30 degrees. This is very individual. Everybody has different hip widths and anthropometry and everything of that nature. So it's important that you play with it and make sure you find something that's comfortable for you. You don't want to feel any pinching in your hips or anything like that. So don't be afraid to play with your stance a little bit. Make sure also when you're performing this movement, just like any other squat pattern, your knees are always tracking in line with your feet and your toes at all times. And you may need to pay attention to this depending on your experience with squatting. A lot of people have the tendency to let their knees cave in. You never want that to happen, so actively make sure that your knees are tracking in line with your toes at all times. And then be sure to make sure you squat down to the point where your hips, or the crease in your hips, are at least a little below the top of your kneecaps in the bottom position. You want to get that good range of motion to make sure you're getting the greatest benefit possible from this exercise. So that's how you perform a landmine squat. It is a good variation if you need a change of pace, or you don't have the ability for whatever reason to perform a barbell squat, or you just don't want to. So that's how you do a landmine squat. Have fun getting strong.